Welcome back. It's time to add the finishing touches to today's Try Your Hand At project with SIA professional artist Mike Skidmore as he concludes how to get to grips with painting portraits in oils.
Back again. You probably saw me earlier on in the programme applying the first layers of flesh to a grey tone underpainting. What I'm now going to do is I'm now going to start to lighten that flesh to bring the painting out and start to create more of a three-dimensional effect. I've got my mix of flesh colours here, and I've got a lighter colour in the range that I've mixed, which I'm going to start by applying here to the lighter areas, but I'll then add even more white to it to really bring it out. And as I paint, the paint will start to get thicker the lighter it gets. Now I'm not going to add any medium to this because I want the paint to start building up. So we'll start to add a few of these lighter areas. Now this is nowhere near as light as it's going to need to be, but as I talked about earlier on, it's very important to build up the lights gradually, step by step, because it's so easy to put the paint on too strong too soon, and then you've got a devil of a job getting it out. Now I can see here on my reference, I can see the various muscle shapes, and I've also already indicated them within the grey tone picture, and so I'm very specifically creating shapes. I like to see a portrait as a series of shapes, and I see it as a sculptor as opposed to just a painter, and I like to look at the planes, I like to see the shapes, I like to kind of try and imagine that I've actually got a real face in front of me that I can effectively touch, run my hands round and feel the contours, the ins, the outs. Now this will very quickly start to build, and as long as I'm mindful of the shapes that I've already worked into the picture, it will create the three dimensions I'm looking for. Now, I've got a few tricky bits on this because the subject is frowning. I'm going to have to be quite careful that it doesn't go from a frown to an extremely caricatured wrinkling of the forehead. And so what I'm going to do is where those shadows are, I'm just going to pull a bit of the flesh over the top of the shadows to push them back a bit and stop them being too strong. Pull that down there, and again where I've got the eyebrows, I'm just going to pull a little bit of the flesh over them so that they feel as if they're part of the head and not some big black caterpillar that I've painted on top. Just like that. Right, now what we need to do, I think, is do a little bit of work in the eyes. Let's get something done in there. I'm going to start with the whites of the eyes. I'm not going to put pure white on. I'm going to mix a little bit of raw umber into that white. You actually very rarely find pure white inside an eye, even though they look as if they are particularly bright quite often. Let's put a little bit in there, and I'm just going to put a little mark of white like that, and I'm going to put a little mark of white, and then I'm going to use a cotton wool bud to pull them round. just to soften them into the space so that it makes the orbs of the eye look more round. I do this quite a lot when I'm applying paint. I put paint into an area and then I push it outwards from the edge, because I find I can control the edges between one colour and another much more effectively by doing that than if I paint up to them and then try to blend them. Now that's too strong a line on the edge of that eye, so we'll just knock that back a little bit like that. Now what I'm going to do is grab some Payne's Grey. The model's actually got blue eyes, but I'll actually apply a bit of blue later on in the picture. What I want to do now is just to get a sense of the shape. So I'm going to put some Payne's Grey and white first. Like that. And a bit of Payne's Grey like that. I'm going to just use the cotton bud to just smooth it out a little bit. I am going to use a bit of pure white now, but with a tiny bit of grey in it. I'm just going to pop the highlight there, and a slightly darker highlight. That's a contradiction in terms, a darker highlight, but it's not as light as the other one, that's what I meant. Okay, so we've now got the basics of the eyes done. Now let's work a bit more into the lighter flesh. So I'm going to now take a bit of white and add it to my lighter mix. Not too much. If I go too far on this, it will look glaring. It will look false. So I just want to add a little bit of white and gradually work myself up to the level I'm looking for. There you go, that's a nice, lighter but gentler bit of colour. And I'm simply following the shapes that I've already put on. Now I don't need to change the colour to change the tone. Basically, if I just put little bits of gently applied colour into a darker area, I can blend it on the canvas. Now this is still going to have to go to another level of lightness across the face, but this will suffice me for now. There we go. And we've got a very strong light bit right in there, and that's effectively the lightest bit on the picture in terms of the skin tones. So I can use this to judge how light I want other areas to be. Use my finger again to start pushing this about. I can start to add more lights to other areas now on top of what I've already put to build this up. Okay, but also I'm going to have to build up the lights on this side. So I'm going to go back to a darker flesh mix now, and I'm going to start to put in some of those tones. So I can add I can add the slightly lighter areas on the darker side of the face. Because this bit really is about subtle painting. If I make a step wrong here, if I put too much on, then I'm going to have to take off everything that's already on the painting and start again. So I'm always very cautious when I'm working things like reflected lights. There's a lot of reflected light down here. Okay. You can now see how I'm starting to build up or construct, as I prefer to think of it, the face with colour, and how useful all of the work underneath has been to allow me to make the right kind of judgments about brush strokes and amounts of paint. It really is all about what you do in the first instance on this, the quality of the drawing and the amount of information you get into the tonal picture. You get all that right, then doing this stuff, adding the colour, really does become fun. Okay, I just want to add a couple of bits to the hair to show you how I do that. Very quickly, I'm just going to add a few strokes to the hair. Won't take much to create a feeling of hair going on. And I'm just going to add a little bit of flesh mix into that, because I find if I mix a bit of flesh into the hair, it feels more like it belongs on that person's head. And I'm just following a few lines, and that will give me enough for the hair to work with. Now, so that brings me to the end of this particular session. I'll look forward to seeing you again in future sessions where I will actually be taking this stage to a much more finished picture.
Thanks, Mike. Encouragement always builds confidence and inspires us all to try something new. Well, folks, before we wrap up today's programme, we've just got time to answer a few viewers' questions. And remember, you can always get in touch and send your questions to asplashofpaint@saa.co.uk. Right, let's take a look at a few viewers' questions. First of all, this one came in from the SAA forum, and it's been answered by PA artist Steve Williams. And the question was, I'm interested in trying the magic watercolour eraser. Will it work with pen and ink? And Steve's answer basically goes to say that it will work great on watercolours and give fantastic effects. It doesn't really work with pen and ink because the ink that you would use on a pen and ink picture would be an extremely waterproof ink, and once it dries forever. So the second question is, I've just started painting in oils, and some people have mentioned buying a dedicated brush for applying the varnish at the end of the picture. Is this a worthwhile investment? Well, for me, I would say yes, big time, because if you get a nice brush for applying a smooth varnished surface, it's exactly what you're looking for, a nice matte surface. Oil brushes are designed to give texture and things like that, where a good varnish brush, you get what you pay for. Well, folks, I hope we've enjoyed getting closer to some of your favourite TV artists and that we've encouraged you to try something new. Join us next time for more inspirational advice and top tips to support you on your artistic journey. We'll see you very soon.
For a free splash of the bi-monthly Paint magazine, packed full of stimulating step-by-step guides, fantastic features and artistic advice from all your favourite TV artists, visit www.saa.co.uk.